Hello, everyone, and welcome to the University of Cincinnati's Arrival Guidelines for Incoming International Students for Fall 2022. My name is Nick Paddock. I'm an International Admissions Assistant Director. I'm thrilled that you're here today to learn a lot from Ron Cushing. Ron Cushing, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Cushing. I'm Director of International Services here at the University of Cincinnati, and it's our office that's responsible for all your visa and immigration needs and your social and cultural adjustment once you arrive on campus. So those of you obtaining student visas, you're going to be getting your I-20 from our office. And throughout the course of the presentation today, we're going to focus on the things that we need you to do from an international student perspective. As new students, you're going to be asked to do a number of things by a number of different university offices. Enrollment management, Nick's office is going to have you do some things. Orientation office is going to ask you to do some things. Your college is going to ask you to do some things. But as international students coming on visas, there's going to need to be some things you need to do with our office too. And we're going to focus on those things this morning.
And so, if you have any questions, you can ask those in our chat box. We will do our best to answer those at the end of the presentation.
Okay, if we're ready to roll, let's get started, Nick. All right, so we realize that many of you are going to have lots and lots of questions about the visa process in particular, and everything surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic and travel and visa restrictions. And we're going to focus on those topics, plus how to work and use our iBearcats global system, which is really what you're going to be using to help facilitate the issuance of your I-20 forms, telling us that your visa's been approved, your arrival in the US, and all of the things that you're going to need to do with us. So you have very special needs as an international student. You've got to do what the university needs you to do for your classes and getting accounts set up. But as international students, you have to do things with us from a visa perspective. So we know you're coming, and more importantly, the minute you get into the US, when you've arrived, so we can activate your legal record. So getting your visa, getting on a plane, and being granted entry into the US is only part of the process. Once you're here, we have to know you're here. We have to collect certain documents from you, and we have to activate your legal record. And so we're going to cover a lot of those things this morning. Next slide, Nick. Now, you're going to do most of these things for us through what we call our iBearcats global system. And the minute you were admitted to the university, you should have received an email from us. The minute you confirmed your admission to the university, you should have received an email from us. And between then and really August, you're going to continue to receive reminder emails from us about completing what we call our pre-arrival checklist. And we'll talk about the various screens here in just a moment. But it's through our iBearcats global system that you're going to do everything, including being issued your I-20 form. Next. Right now, this is what the email you should have received from us looks like. And again, you'll receive this twice, once when you're admitted, once when you confirmed. But the two key pieces of information that you need are your UCID, your M number, and our iBearcats Global PIN number. And our email to you, and we don't even see your PIN number ourselves. It's system generated. Only you're going to see it. And so it's very important that you find those emails from us. And also keep in mind, one of the big struggles we have with newly admitted students is most of the communication goes to your UC email address. And so make sure you are checking your UC email regularly. But this is what the email will look like. It will tell you how to get to our portal and what you need to do to log in. Next. Now, this is going to bring you to what we call our pre-arrival checklist. And you're going to use that checklist to do everything from learn how to understand how to activate things like your UCM number and email through being issued your I-20, all the way up to your actual arrival in the US, providing us with the documents we need to activate your legal record, getting scheduled for your mandatory health screening, and learning the rules and regulations that you're going to need to follow as international students. Next. Now, when you go to our link, and we have lots of students that get confused at this part, you need, even if you have an ID, so what throws people off is that link that says don't have a network ID. It doesn't matter if you have a network ID or not. If you're a new student coming for the first time, every time you log into our system, you need to be clicking that button that says new student or scholar login. Next. Now, when you click that link, it's going to bring you to our login, and it's going to ask you for your university ID and your limited services PIN. And so make sure that you, again, revert back to looking at that email that my office sends you to get those details. But then you click the login button. Next. Now, that's going to bring you to all 7 sections of our pre-arrival checklist. And ultimately, between now and when you arrive and classes begin, you will have to complete all 7 sections of our pre-arrival checklist, and you need to complete them in order. So you can't complete section 6 until section 5 is done, and you know, go back down the list. You got to start with section 1, work through it, finish it, then that moves you to section 2. And you know, you've got to make sure that you complete it in order and understand that this is a checklist that's going to be completed at various stages between now and your arrival on campus. And you have to remember when it's appropriate to finish each section. And most importantly, make sure that upon your arrival in the US, you finish all 7 sections. All right. Now, next. Now, when you go to the checklist, you're going to see our 7 sections. It's going to have a welcome section, a get your I-20 or DS 2019 section, plan your arrival, review and register for events, immigration review, mandatory health screening, and resources. Now, every single one of these sections are important because they explain to you things that you need to do, including, obviously, those of you who need F1 or J1 visas, one of the critical steps, which is obtaining your I-20 or DS 2019. Sometimes completing these sections is merely reading what's there and checking I agree or I understand. In other cases, you're going to have to upload documents, provide us with things like your local Cincinnati address, those kinds of things. But each section will explain what you need to do and provide you with links to upload documents that are needed or links to go to various university websites to do what you need to do. And so we're going to cover each one of these sections. Next. So if you have already received your US visa, but you have yet to enter the country, you should already have completed our welcome section, the get your I-20 section, plan your arrival, review and register for events, and at least parts of immigration review. And we're going to cover these sections in just a second. But again, this checklist has 7 sections that has to be completed in order to get to the next section. And as you're eligible to complete those sections, it's up to you to know it's time to go back and finish the next step of the process. Ultimately, you will not be able to finish this checklist until you physically enter the US. Next. So the first section, the welcome section. This is a very basic section where it gives you links for confirming your admission, for activating your UC email and credentials. All you need to do is follow the instructions in the links. And once you've done those things, click the submit button. Now, I can tell you one of the biggest struggles we've had at this section for students trying to get I-20s is saying they have activated their UC email account when they really haven't. We send I-20s to the UC email account. And unless you've followed those steps, so don't just check a button saying, yes, I've done this. Make sure you have actually done it. We won't send your I-20 until your UC email is activated and on our record. Next. So when you open up the welcome section, you're going to see a link for first steps. And always, every time you open a section, it's going to have introductory language about what this section is for and what you need to do. Make sure you read it fully and then move to the required steps. Next slide. Now, for the first step, again, we're just explaining to you, you've got a UC ID, you've got to confirm your admission, and you've got a UC email account, you've got to activate it. We provide you the instructions, we provide you the links, just make sure you do it. And then once you've done it, then you click the I have completed these steps link on the welcome page. Next. That brings you to what is typically the first question we get from any student who needs a visa, and that is, how do I get my I-20 form? Now, most of you are probably going to be getting I-20 forms. That's for an F1 visa. Some of you might be getting a J1 visa, in which case you'll be getting a DS 2019. That's typically for our exchange students, but not all of you will actually need an I-20 or a DS 2019. Some of you may already be in the US on other non-immigrant statuses or be coming to the US on another status, and you may not want or need an I-20 or DS 2019 at all. Everybody, though, must complete this section. If you're not going to need an I-20, there will be a box you can check that says, I'm going to be studying on my current status and don't need an I-20, but everybody must complete this section. Next. Now, on this section, you're going to be asked a series of questions to help us determine which one of the very specific pots you're going to fall into. You either need an I-20 and are getting an F1 visa, or you're in the country, need to change your status to F1, or you're not going to need an I-20, you're in the country on some other status. Make sure you only answer yes to one of those questions. If you're getting an I-20 form, you will have to supply us with proof of financial support, and that includes any sponsors completing and submitting our financial certification form. All of the links are at the bottom of the e-form. The financial certification form, links to see how much you have to supply based on the program of study you've been admitted to. You know, there may be differences in costs, but all of that is explained and linked on the e-form. Next. Now, once you're issued the I-20 form, then you have to go pay what's called a CVIS fee. And if you're F1 or J1, you're going to have to pay that. And you have to pay it before your visa appointment. The link will give you instructions on where to go and how to pay it. And then you simply confirm that you have paid it. Next screen. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So you'll see that after you've completed the welcome screen, you'll see a check mark by it, which means that's done. That then opens up your access to the Get Your UC I-20 or DS 2019 form. You have to complete the sources of support e-form before it opens up the SEVIS fee screen. Next slide. So what you're really after here is your I-20 form. And to get that, you must document your proof of financial support. And understanding how that process works is critical to expediting the I-20 issuance. Next slide. The first thing you need to know is how much support you have to show. Most undergraduate students will have to show that you have the ability to be supported for at least $46,290 per year. That includes tuition and fees, estimate of living expenses, and the mandatory health insurance fee. Now, put aside how much you have to show for a minute. I do want to take a moment and explain living expenses. That's not an exact figure. That's an average estimate for people living in our housing in particular. Those of you who are going to be living in housing, that is pretty much what you're going to pay for the housing and a meal plan. That doesn't include extra costs like meals you want to go out and buy on your own and snacks you need to have for your apartment and those kinds of things. Some of you will live, for a year pretty comfortably on that amount. Others of you may be able to live cheaper if you live off campus with roommates and, sharing costs. And others of you may live in a place that costs more than that. It's not an exact science when quoting those living expenses. So be prepared for that. Some of you will live a little bit cheaper. Some of you may live a little bit more expensive than that. Next slide. At the bottom of the e-form, you will find a link to our financial certification form, and everybody must fill out the financial certification form. Some of you'll only be doing page 1 if you get full support from the university or you're providing support from your own personal funds. But the reality is at the undergraduate level, most students do have sponsors, parents, other family members and friends who are going to be providing support. And in that case, the second page of the form has to be filled out by the sponsor. Next slide. We need to know who that sponsor is and how much support they are going to promise you. And whatever amount they put here is what we're going to say they're providing you in terms of support. So make sure when you're filling out page 1, you make sure that the funds match what the sponsor is saying on page 2. Next slide. Sponsors or yourself, if you're using personal funds, always have to attach a bank statement. So if they're saying we're going to provide $25,000 a year in support, they have to show a bank statement that shows they have at least $25,000 a year available to them. They can also attach employment letters, bank other kinds of investment portfolios, income tax returns. But we have to be convinced through the documents you supply that the sponsor has the funds that they're guaranteeing. And when you get them all together, you need to scan them all into one document for upload. So the financial certification form, the bank statement, any scholarship letters you have, all of those things have to be scanned into one document. Next slide. Now, when you go to that section, it's going to ask you 3 very specific questions, and you should only be answering yes to one of those. You're outside the US, or you're going to be going outside the US to get a J1 or F1 visa. You're currently in the US and wish to change your immigration status to F1, or you're currently inside the US on another status and you're going to study on that. How you answer those questions is very important because it opens up other sections that you'll have to fill out if, for example, you're outside the US and you need to apply for a visa. It's going to provide you with different forms and fields to fill out than if you say I'm currently in the US and I don't need an I-20. But you'll see at the bottom are the links to financial certification form, room and board affidavit if you have family or friends who are going to be letting you live with them, and the link to our estimated annual expenses. So use those links accordingly. Next slide. Once the I-20 is issued, then that's going to open up the pay the SEVIS fee section of section 2. And it's going to give you instructions on where to go, how to pay the fee. You have to pay the SEVIS fee before your visa appointment. Or if you're going to be on a status that doesn't require you to get an I-20 or DS 2019, you would say, I don't need to pay it. Don't check that box unless you've actually gone and paid the fee. Next slide. Now, at this point, you've got what you need to apply for your visa, or you've declared you're going to be studying on the current visa section. One of the problems we have with a lot of our new students is moving on beyond that part for our checklist. You've got an I-20, you need to get a visa. People drop it there and oftentimes don't go back to our checklist. We need you to continue to complete the checklist. And in particular, it's called Plan Your Arrival, and it's for those who want to live in university housing or tell us you're not going to live in university housing. So if you want to live in university housing, it provides you with the link to housing, how you apply, how you confirm, all of those kinds of things. Next slide. So you would fill it out, and once you have applied for housing or you're not going to want housing, you then click the box. Again, don't click the box saying I've applied for housing if in fact you haven't applied for housing, but you want to. Make sure that you've done that step before you check the box. Next slide. Once you complete that section, then you're going to have to do the events registration. And depending on whether you're an undergraduate student or a graduate student, different things are going to pop up. But click on events registration. Next slide. And it's going to ask you, are you an undergraduate or exchange student? Are you a degree-seeking graduate student? And when are you joining? Make sure you answer those questions correctly, because again, what you answer there is going to open up different links and explanations to what you need to do next. Next slide. Then once you're done with that, that brings you to the immigration review section. And that section has 3 very specific parts. The first is uploading your passport and your visa. So obviously, until your visa gets approved, you're not going to be able to proceed with this section. But once your visa is approved, we need you to remember to go back to our pre-arrival checklist and start completing this section. This is how we know that of all the people that we've issued I-20s for, who actually has been able to secure their visa stamp. That's very important for us to know. Don't wait until later in the summer. The minute you get your visa stamp, make sure you're going back to immigration review and completing the passport and upload section. Next slide. So we're going to ask you to provide details. What's your passport number? When does it expire? When was it issued? The same with the visa. And it's going to ask you to upload copies of those documents at this point. Click next slide, please. And so make sure that you answer the questions correctly. Almost everybody filling out this form is going to answer no to the first question. Are you a DACA student. There's a very special group of students that are referred to in the US as DACA. We need to know when that's you so we can take you to different links. Most people are not DACA. If you're getting an F1 visa, you're not DACA, and you're checking no. And when you check yes, do you have a passport? It's going to ask you to upload that file. Next slide. Now, once you have uploaded your visa and passport, the next part of immigration review is called mandatory personal information. Do not attempt to complete this section until you are sure where you will be staying in Cincinnati. You must know your street address, zip code, all of those things. It can be a temporary address, but once you get a permanent address, you need to not only complete our pre-arrival checklist, but you have to go to your University Catalyst account and update your mailing address in Cincinnati. Students get this confused all the time. In Catalyst, you're going to be updating your address. We need that address as part of the pre-arrival checklist. So you have to do it in both places. But when you do it, the mailing address in Catalyst is your Cincinnati address, and your permanent address is your address in your home country. All right. So make sure that you're following those instructions. We're also going to ask you for things like information about emergency contacts and all that kind of stuff as well. Next slide. So it's going to ask you questions that you're going to answer yes or no to. And more importantly, it's also going to ask you, when do you expect to arrive in Cincinnati? And again, we don't want an estimate at this point. We don't want you to fill that out until you know for sure and have an airline ticket, to Cincinnati. Then you fill it out. So the point is, many of you at the point that you've uploaded your visa and passport, you may not be able to proceed with mandatory personal information until you've made your flight arrangements, until you have gotten confirmation of what your dorm assignment will be, or you've made your own arrangements for an apartment. Next slide. When you fill out the mandatory information form, and this is true when you're doing your Catalyst account for mailing and permanent address. We write addresses here in the US differently than most of you write them in your home country. And it's important that you write the address according to US protocols. And in the US, that means the street number, then the street name, then the apartment number, then the city, the state, and the zip code. So make sure when you're filling out your addresses, both in our pre-arrival checklist and in Catalyst, that you're doing it correctly. Street number, street name, apartment number. In a lot of countries, it's the opposite way. It's apartment number or unit number first. And that's not how it's done in the US. And because of interfaces we have with our government, you have to make sure you write the address correctly. Next slide. Now, a big question every new student asks is, will somebody meet me at the airport? We provide free transportation from the Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport to campus. And all of that information is on the pre-arrival checklist, including a linked password that you can use to make those reservations. Next slide. There you go. All right, so there we go. All right, so it's at the bottom of the mandatory personal information section. And it provides you with the link to go to make your airport transportation request, as well as a password that you will need for that semester. So make sure when you're completing the pre-arrival checklist, if you want, not everybody wants or needs a ride from the airport. Some of you have family or friends who are going to pick you up, but if you need a ride from the airport, we will give that to you free of charge. All you've got to do is click the link, then it'll take you to a website where you'll fill out information and put in the password. Now, I'm going to take a minute to explain how that works once you get to the airport. So at our airport, all the baggage claims are in the same place. And the company is called Airport Executive Transportation. It's the official shuttle of the airport. And they have a desk at every baggage claim area. Once you pick up your baggage, you would simply go to their desk, tell them you're a new UC student who made transportation arrangements, and they will bring you to campus. Very simple. Next. Now, the final step of immigration review is called the I-94 card record upload, and you will not be able to complete this until you enter the US. So everybody's issued what's called an I-94 card upon arrival in the US. And it's an electronically issued card that you have to go to a website operated by our government to download. When you download it, make sure it says what your status is. Make sure it says that you've been admitted for what's called DS, duration of status. But this is where it starts to get really confusing for some of our new students. You got a lot going on arriving, moving into housing, going to orientations. Do not forget, when you arrive in the US, you've got to come back and finish our checklist. And that's going to start with your going to the I-94 card website and uploading us a copy of it. Next slide. So it's going to ask you for the number. Everybody's going to get an individually specific number. And it's going to ask you what date you arrived, what city you arrived in. And more importantly, it's going to ask you to upload a copy of that card that you can only get from the website. Next slide. Now, once that's done, every new student who arrives at the university has to have a mandatory health screening where we screen for tuberculosis, we go over your immunizations. Once you arrive and you've done the I-94 card, immediately complete the mandatory health screening section. It's going to ask you for personal information, and then it's going to tell you, once you've done all of that, to call our health services directly to get scheduled for a health screening. Next slide. So make sure that when you come to that section that you answer all the questions that it asks, but then specifically make sure you call health services. If you fail to do this and get a health screening, they will cancel your classes. This is a very important process, and it's up to you to make sure you do it. So again, what I want all of you to leave this seminar knowing is you've got to complete our pre-arrival checklist. You're going to be able to complete parts of it now, but you're not going to be able to finish it until you enter the US. And the moment you enter the US, you need to go back and finish it. Next slide. Now, the final section of our checklist is called resources and regulations. And so as an international student, you're going to have a lot of rules and regulations that you're going to need to follow. And we will certainly at orientations and other meetings that you'll have the ability to attend, and I'll cover that in a second, try to stress those things to you. But we have videos, we have online orientations, we have handbooks, we have lots of links to things that will explain those rules to you. Just click on the immigration regulation student resources link and it'll take you to them. Next slide. And so One of the things we have is an online student orientation. You need to make sure you click on that and you watch the orientation. It will cover the regulations that are specific to F1 and J1 students. There will be other links to other things that you can click on and review. The point is, when you enter the US on an F1 or J1 visa, there are rules you have to follow. We will provide you with access to all those rules, where possible, explain those to you. But ultimately, it's your responsibility to know the rules and regulations you have to follow. And we give you access to all of those things through our pre-arrival checklist. And then once you've viewed everything, then you check saying, I've completed resources and regulations, and then that completes the checklist. Next slide. All right, so that's the pre-arrival checklist portion of our presentation today. Now let's turn our attention to all the arrival information you need to be aware of, because as everybody knows, the world is still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this university, our country, your country, the airlines you're going to get on, all have different rules and regulations about who can travel and when, and you need to understand those. Next slide. So the first thing you got to know is you have to be fully vaccinated for COVID-19 by approved and authorized vaccines to enter the United States and to get on a plane. And you must have received all necessary doses at least 2 weeks prior to your trying to get on a plane. The only exception to that would be if you've recently had COVID and fully recovered and you can prove that. Next slide. Now, you have to understand what the approved vaccines are, because there are vaccines out there that some individuals can get that are not on the approved list. It's Pfizer, Moderna, Janssen, AstraZeneca, Covaxin, Covishield, Sinovac, and Sinopharm. Those are the only approved vaccines that will consider you to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Next slide. You should carry your proof of vaccination with you to the airline. They may ask you for it at the port of entry. You're going to have to upload it to the university as well. Next slide. Now, all forms of proof of COVID-19 vaccination must show who you are, your name, date of birth, those kinds of things, the name of the official source issuing the record, and the vaccine manufacturer. So all of those things confirm who you are and that you've gotten the appropriate vaccine. You need to make sure you carry that with you when you go to the airport. Next slide. Now, there are limitations. One limitation is if you're from a country where less than 10% of the total population has been vaccinated. If you're under 18, there is an exemption to being vaccinated, and students with certain medical conditions are. But if you qualify for one of those exemptions, you're going to have to go through a lot of things upon arrival in terms of testing and then agreeing to get vaccinated, if possible, within a certain period of time. Next slide. Now, if you're from one of these countries as of mid-April, these are the countries that are deemed to have less than 10% of the total population vaccinated. If you're from any other country, that means, you really need to be vaccinated before you try to come. If you're from one of these countries, hopefully you are vaccinated, so you don't have to go through all of the additional things that those who aren't vaccinated are required to go through. Next slide. Now, next slide there. We're kind of bumping around here. There we go. All right. So if you are granted an exemption, you're going to have a negative COVID test within 1 day of flight. You're going to have to be tested within 3 to 5 days after your arrival. You're going to have to self-quarantine for at least 7 days. And if you're going to be here longer than 60 days, which all of you will be, you have to agree to be vaccinated unless you have a medical exemption. And so you'll be able to get that vaccination here at the university. Next slide. Now, UC requires all of our students to be vaccinated as well. The good news is most of you will be vaccinated or you won't get on a plane. But UC requires that as well. And you must submit your proof of vaccination to UC using the UC COVID Check app. And so, you need to make sure you've downloaded that and you've gone to the website. And, when you have your vaccination status, if you already have it, you can upload it now. Next slide. It's very important that you understand all the key dates for arrival and you plan your arrival accordingly. Now, the first thing is classes start at UC on August 22nd. That's a Monday. Everybody must be here by August 22nd. Your I-20 will say August 22nd is the start date. You will be allowed to arrive up to 30 days in advance of that start date. But those of you who are going to be living in university housing, you don't want to arrive 30 days in advance unless you have places to go and stay prior to August 13th and 14th. If you're going to be living in university housing, you absolutely must plan your arrival for the 13th or 14th. There's no additional charge to arrive on these days, but if you're going to arrive on the 13th, there's going to be an early arrival form that you have to fill out. And we encourage you to arrive on the 13th, just in case. Many flights get delayed and you end up getting here a day after you intended. We can accommodate early arrivals as early as August 10th, but there will be an additional charge. You have to understand that our services may not be open at that point, dining halls and those kinds of things. If you're going to be staying in university housing, we want you to arrive on the 13th or 14th. If you arrive prior to the 10th, we can't help you with accommodations at all, and you'll need to make your own plans on hotels or whatever to stay before that. So it's very important that those of you staying in university housing plan to arrive the 13th or 14th, unless you can make other accommodation. Maybe you have family or friends in the US you're going to go stay with until the 13th or 14th, but make sure you're planning your arrival here for the 13th or 14th. And anybody else, you're allowed to arrive up to 30 days before that start date if necessary to do things like find apartments and those kinds of things. Next slide. Now, if you need early arrival accommodations, again, there's going to be a form that you're going to have to fill out, and it's going to be posted hopefully by next month on the housing website, and you need to be checking the UC COVID Check app at the website that is on the screen as well. Next slide. Now, for undergrads in particularly, you need to understand not only when you need to get into housing, but what's going to happen that week before classes begin. So new student orientation is called Bearcat Bound orientation. And for most new students who are arriving in August, that means you're going to attend BBO, that's what it's short for, on the 15th, 16th, or 17th. It's going to be one of those days. If you're already in the country, you can attend any of the summer BBO orientations. If you're an F1 transfer student, for example, and you're here, you can go to any one of the regularly scheduled summer BBOs. But those of you arriving for the fall from outside the US, you're going to need to plan on attending BBO on the 15th, 16th, or 17th. Then throughout the rest of the week, my office, the other university offices are going to be having lots of different events that you can participate in. And in some cases, you should be participating in. So on the 18th of August, my office has a welcome for all students, 1 to 3 o'clock. And it is, you're going to be in person in Great Hall. We're also going to have an online virtual session for students on August 19th that you can sign up for. Our iPal student group will be having a welcome soccer and snow cone event on the 21st. And then later this summer, it's not all posted yet, the university will have just a huge amount of welcome week activities, fun things to do, ways to meet new students from August 14th to the 21st. You need to make sure that you check that out and participate with those. The bottom line, though, is every student must plan on having arrived and completing our checklist no later than August 22nd. Next slide. You also need to be aware of insurance issues. Most of you are going to end up using the University of Cincinnati Student Health Insurance Plan, and it takes effect on August 10th. If you arrive before August 10th, you need to make sure you have some kind of international travelers insurance that covers you in case of accident or illness. Over the years, we've had many students not do this, get sick, get hit by a car, something unfortunate, and then suddenly they have thousands and thousands of dollars in medical bills to pay. Make sure you have insurance that covers you before the 10th if you come before the 10th, and it's your responsibility to make sure you do that. Next slide. Now, you also need to understand what you need to do in terms of enrolling for your classes, because you're going to have lots of options in terms of both in-person, hybrid, and fully online classes. If you are coming on an F1 or a J1 student visa, you have to be enrolled full-time. And for undergrads, that means 12 credit hours. For grads, it means 10 credit hours. You cannot enroll in only online classes and enter the US. Next slide. Only 3 credit hours of online courses can be used to reach your full-time enrollment threshold. Once that threshold has been met, additional online courses can be taken. For example, if you're an undergraduate student and you take 9 credit hours of in-person courses and 6 credit hours of online courses, that is fine. But you need to make sure that you're enrolled full-time, and to reach that full-time threshold, only 3 of those credit hours are online. And then again, beyond that, you can register for more. It's important to understand what courses at UC are considered online versus in person. Next slide. So, in order, next slide. Oops, there we go. That's the one I'm looking for. All right. So in Catalyst, courses have certain designations. P means fully in person. DL means fully online. But then there's 2 classifications that can sometimes be confusing. There's PD for partially distance learning and MD for mostly distance learning. and it's important that you understand this. PD classes are considered in person. MD classes are considered fully online. And so when you're registering, make sure again, you're in at least 9 credit hours of P or PD classes, and then the other classes can be DL or MD. But it's up to you to make sure you understand that and you register accordingly. Next slide. So that concludes our formal presentation for arrivals. And again, you guys got a lot of things to keep in mind. You've got to do things for enrollment management. You've got to do things for your college, and you've got to do things for us. And this presentation was focused on what you need to do for UC International Services. And again, that pre-arrival checklist is critical. Keep completing it as you can. Again, the next time you should be filling out something is once your visa has been issued. And then most importantly, for some of you, there's liable to be a couple of month gap between when you get your visa and when you enter the US. And it's up to you to remember, once you enter the US, you have to go back to our pre-arrival checklist and finish it, because we have to have that information and documentation to activate your legal record in the United States.